Average Woodsman here, back with another video. So I want to start working on like a semi-permanent shelter to have as like a base camp here on this property. So I'm going to be doing that over the next couple of weeks, working on that, building it. Probably going to do it in this area right here. I haven't decided exactly where I'm going to do it, but it's probably going to be here. But part of that, I want to, you know, this part of this semi-permanent shelter, like a base camp, I want to have it as comfortable as possible and sturdy and well built as possible. So today, I'm gonna work on like a bushcraft loom, so I can make mats and things for maybe a doorway, like a door for my doorway of the shelter, if that's what I want to build. I'm not exactly sure how I want to build the shelter yet, but that's what I'm going to work on today. I'm going to work on that. That'll also give me something to sit on when I'm out here working on the shelter, building the shelter. If I want to stop and take a break and eat or anything like that, sleep, I can do that while I'm out here with it. And yeah, that's what I'm going to work on today. And I figured I'd take you guys along for the ride, show you guys how to build one. I looked on YouTube. I didn't really see many videos on it. Maybe one or two from like 8-10 years ago. So it's not something that people really seem to be all that focused on building, but it's a really important skill. I learned this when I was up north training. So it's one of those things where I think it's an important skill to have, especially if you're talking about bushcraft, survival, living off the land, things like that. It's something that you would use, maybe not on a regular basis, but a semi-regular basis. So let's go ahead and get in the video. All right, so you're gonna need 5 poles total, 4 if you're doing this with someone, but the 5th pole will be for holding the looming stick while you're actually, you know, doing the process by yourself. So that's what this one is for, but we'll go over that when we get to that point. So you're gonna want 2 poles, 3 poles total, all the same length, and then 1 pole a little bit shorter, which I'll show you in a second. So with these two, these ones are going to go down here. This will be kind of like the back end of the loom. And with the cordage, you're going to want it about double the length you're making the mat. So it really depends on how far you're making the mat, how long you're making the mat. Say, just use a round number. I'm not making mine 6 feet long, but say you were making yours 6 feet long, you'd want a little more than double that in the actual line. But like I said, I'm not making mine quite that long, so mine doesn't need to be, you know, 13, 14 feet long, the line. But so I'll take this, use this kind of as my measurement for it. Move back just a little bit here. Make this as my measurement, basically, and then what I'll do is I'll drive these sticks down into the ground. Thankfully, the ground is pretty soft out here. There's one. There's 2. So this is just another example of why it's so important to carry cordage with you in your kit when you head out into the woods. Could you make cordage, enough cordage for this? Yes, you could make more than enough cordage. But if you carry cordage with you, for instance, I'm using bank line for this, you don't have to make the cordage when you're out there, unless you just want to, which is fine. So this is going to wrap around your stick. Let's move these down here. My cordage is going to wrap around my rear stick. I'm going to bring this down the length I want it. So this is probably a little bit longer than I would actually want. Let's see if I can get this straight. A little longer than I would actually want. But that's fine. I made sure I collected plenty of material. And we'll do that with this one as well. right here. We're going to wrap this around my rear stick. Bring this down. Remember, you want both of these to be roughly the same length, as close as possible. And what I can do, since these are a little bit longer than I really want to make this mat, I think what I'll do is I'm going to tie my knot a little bit higher up for where my actual sticks are going to go. All right, so for this portion, we're going to want this to roughly be about the same length as this is going to be the width of our mat that we're making. So say this was a doorway you were making, a kind of a folding doorway or a roll-up doorway. You'd want that to be as wide as the door that you actually created on your structure. And for this, for the knot that I'm using, I'm just using a simple slip knot here. So what you'll want to do is you want to take this line and turn it over on itself, push the tag end through, and just pull it tight like this. Okay. This one I actually am going to bring down a little bit real quick so it can be exactly even with my other line. It needs to be exactly even with it. Oh. Same length for both. Because one of these, the inside is going to go, the inside line is going to go on your shorter stick. The outside line is going to go on your longer stick. That's what's going to create the looming action, which I'll show you guys now. So now that we got the loop knots in here, by the way, if you guys see me swiping at my face or going like this, it's because the no-see-ums and the mosquitoes are out in full force this morning. They're really, really bad. And yeah, they're just horrendous this morning. So they're flying in my face. They're flying in my corners of my eyes, my ears, my hair. So just, you know, please be patient with me. Right now they're flying into my eyeballs. So let's go ahead and get these on. So what we'll do, you're going to want to make sure that you have, they need to be exactly the same length. Remember, they need to be exactly the same length, both sides. Move these back a little bit. And the inside will go on the smaller one. Smaller stick, outside line will go on the longer stick. Okay? Just like that. Another reason why I like to use bank line is because the knots actually hold pretty well once they're down. Alright, so now you guys should be able to see kind of the looming action. It's going to go this way, this way. This will create the looming action that'll create our mat. Alright, remember I said that there's a fifth stick that you're going to need? This is the fifth stick. This will be to lift your stick, dig this into the ground, to lift your stick so that way when you're placing whatever type of material you're using, whether that be, you know, like I'm using dog fennel, if you reed grass, cattail stalks, whatever you're using, you're going to actually push these. This is going to go into the ground. All right. You're going to want this to go into the ground. Here, you're going to feed your whatever material you're using here, and then that's going to hold that's actually going to hold these up. It's actually going to hold this up. Just like this. Hold it up so that way I can get the material in here for each one, which is what's going to create that looming action. So I'm going to feed these in here like so. Just like this. Let's make it a little bit easier on me at the end. These, you want this tight up against here. As tight as possible. And then what I'll do is I'll remove this. as you can see, this is what it'll start to look like. You want this to be nice and tight as possible. And then what I'll do is I'll continuously lift it, put them in there, then switch the process, lift it, put them in there, and it'll create the pockets necessary to weave these into, creating, you know, my mat, which is what it's going to be today. So let's continue to do this real quick, and then I'll show you guys the finished product. So I went ahead and scratched using that 5th stick. I've used that method in the past and it works well. Just that stick particularly wasn't working well. So I'm just going back to lifting it manually each time, and then taking some of my dog fennel and putting it in here like this. This way's a little slower, a little more tedious, and the mat is not going to be quite as tight like this. But what I like to do is just pull it tight, make sure it's as tight as possible on each end. As tight as I can possibly get it on each end. So that way I can roll this up and transport it if I absolutely have to. You know, or I could just leave it out here. It's not a big deal, because like I said, this is going to be a semi-permanent base camp. But let's just keep doing this. I'm just going to keep going and going until I get to the end. Alright, so once you get to the end, you're just going to want to tie this off with just a regular overhand knot. Just make sure it's nice and tight. The knot. Tie this off. Nice and tight. And then I'll trim the edges once I'm done. As you can see, I didn't have to make this thing too long, because of the simple fact that I'm not actually using this as like a sleeping mat or as a door or anything like that. I'm just making this simply as a mat to sit on, as a mat to use temporarily over time, to work on, sit around camp, to keep me off the ground. So that is why it's, you know, maybe, I don't know, 3.5 feet long. All right, there you go. And once you're done with everything else, you just take the rear sticks out of the ground, and then this can be rolled up if you want to, like this. It can be rolled up and carried with you wherever you want to go. You know, you can unroll it, use it for sitting on. This thing is a lot more comfortable than the ground, I can tell you that. It'll keep me insulated from the ground. It'll keep me off the ground. So it's just a super simple, fast way of doing it. This only took me, with collecting material and everything, maybe an hour and a half to make, maybe less than that. And it might take you about double that time to make one 6 or so feet long. So basically, maybe 2 to 3 hours by yourself. Remember, I'm doing all this by myself. If I had another person with me, helping me with this, helping me collect materials, helping me weave everything in here, helping me use the loom and putting them in while I'm doing the looming action, it would have been a lot faster. But it's just me out here doing this all by myself. But like I said previously, you know, it's something good to know. It's something good to learn. It's just another skill that you can use when you're out in the woods. And like I said, I just trimmed up the edges with my machete. Well, technically it wasn't a machete. It's my Pathfinder forest tool, but I can do that with my Pathfinder forest tool because this is relatively soft ground. This is a lot of dirt and sand. If you're in an area that has harder ground, I would not recommend using a really good, like your main machete or your main, like a forest tool or something like that. I would use something older that you don't really care about, because it's probably going to get damaged if it hits like any types of rocks, limestone, stuff like that. But out here it's just dirt and sand, so I didn't have to worry about that, and I just trimmed it up. Now I can roll it up, take it with me, or I can leave it out here and use it each time. It's just really up to me. So yeah, let's go ahead and close this video out.